Loud and clear.
You are listening to Loud and Clear. I'm Brian Becker. The CIA and now President Obama and leaders both of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in Congress continue to push the story that Russia hacked emails from the Democratic Party and possibly the Republican Party, but more the Democratic Party, to help Donald Trump become president of the United States. And President Obama has ordered an investigation into this issue. We'll speak now with NSA whistleblower Bill Binney about his argument that these were inside leaks, not outside hacks from Russia or some other entity. We are joined from Maryland by NSA whistleblower Mr. Binney to talk about the statement that he wrote for the Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, or VIPS. Welcome back, Bill Binney.
Oh, thanks for having me back. Yeah.
Bill, your article that's up on Consortium News and other sites and represents really not just your thinking, but the thinking of other intelligence veterans. And the title is U.S. Intel Vets Dispute Russia Hacking Claims. It really goes over the facts, something that's been really missing in the mainstream media. And your assertion is that the facts don't add up to the allegation that this was, in fact, a Russian hack or a hack at all.
Yeah, sure, that's right. Because, in order to get to the servers, they would have to come across the network and go into the servers, penetrate them, and then extract data out of the servers and bring it back across the network. And then, if it were the Russians, then go to Russia, and then it have to go from there into across the network again to get to WikiLeaks. Well, the point is that anything doing that would be picked up by NSA's vast surveillance system, both in terms of collecting the data as it transits the fiber optics inside the U.S. as well as internationally. And also, they have trace route packets all embedded in hundreds of switches around the world, which means they could trace the route of all the packets, where they came from, where they went, and how they got there. And so it's a matter of saying with all the billions that we spent on this collection access system that NSA has, why there's no way that could have missed all the packets being transferred from those servers but to the Russians. They should know exactly how and when those packets left those servers and went to the Russians, and where specifically in Russia it went. There's no excuse for not knowing that.
So this is important. The idea, the NSA, if this was a hack, that the NSA would know both the point of transit. In other words, they would know who was the sender and they would know who the recipient was of the hacking material. They would know because of the comprehensive surveillance that they're able to carry out and do carry out on the World Wide Web. That's what you're saying. And what the CIA is saying, and what the Obama administration is saying, is that based on circumstantial evidence, they've concluded that there was a Russian hack. In other words, there would be no need at all for circumstantial evidence if the NSA has access to this kind of information. And if the hack took place, they would know about it. They would be able to trace it.
That's correct, yeah.
Talk about how much we know about this network thanks to the work of Edward Snowden.
Yes, he basically pulled data showing their entire effort worldwide. And primarily, I think he was focused on the United States. But, internally, the main program they're using is the Fairview program. That has about 100 taps in the fiber network inside the United States, lower 48 states of the United States. And that basically means that they have access to, and they're distributed with the population, by the way. They're not along the coasts. If they were only after foreigners, that's where they'd be. But they're really after the U.S. population and all the servers and what have you inside the United States. So, and those taps distributed with the population are the things that they're using to access and collect content as well as metadata on all the information passing around the United States. That's why they have to keep building bigger and bigger storage facilities, and like, for example, the facility they're building on Fort Meade now is a 2.8 million square foot facility. That's 3 times the size of Utah. Well, if you think basically, if you took General Alexander's assertion that they want to collect everything, that's an ever-increasing amount year after year. That means you have to keep building bigger and bigger storage facilities to maintain it. Until they get into something like quantum storage. At that point, then the size of the storage facilities should shrink.
Bill Binney, President Obama, speaking on The Daily Show on Comedy Central a couple nights ago, said Russia is trying to influence our elections and this dates back to the Soviet Union. What they did here, again, this is President Obama's words, hacking some emails and releasing them is not a particularly fancy brand of espionage or propaganda. We were frankly more concerned in the run-up to the election to the possibilities of vote tampering, which we did not see evidence of. Now, there's, what's being discussed in the mainstream media and by different politicians from different camps is that the Obama administration knew about the Russian hack and decided really not to reveal it in full for different sort of political considerations or calculations, and that they're doing so now. Well, why are they doing it now? I mean, what do you think is going on?
Well, my take on it is that they don't have the evidence to show what they're saying. They're just basically reiterating over and over again from different positions like CIA, the White House, and so on, under the basic assumption that people will believe that what they're saying is true if they say it often enough and from so many different supposedly authoritative sources. My point is really pretty simple. There should be no guessing here at all. They should be able to show the trace routes of all the packets, or some of them anyway, going to the Russians and then from the Russians to WikiLeaks. There's no excuse for not being able to do that. And that would be the basic evidence to prove it. Otherwise, it could be any hacker in the world or any other government in the world. I mean, who knows? The point is they're supposed to prove the assertions that they're making, and they're not doing that. That means, to me, they don't have the evidence, which means to me, again, if this network that NSA has couldn't find the routing of these packets around the network anywhere, then it had to be an insider to do the job. Much like Martin for the TAO access into the source code for their attacks through the networks on different systems, firewalls, and so on, or much like Edward Snowden, the material he took, or Bradley Manning, the material he took. So those would not go across the network. They would be taken out by a thumb drive or something and then passed separately away from the servers and therefore not be traceable back to those servers.
William Binney, the article that you wrote for VIPS, Vets Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, I want to read to the audience what you wrote because it's essentially the same thing that you're saying here, but I want to read it again because I think it's so important for people to be able, especially people who aren't experts, to wrap their heads around it. You write, we have gone through the various claims about hacking. For us, it's child's play to dismiss them. The email disclosures in question are the result of a leak, not a hack. Here's the difference between leaking and hacking. Leak: when someone physically takes data out of an organization and gives it to some other person or organization, as Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning did. Hack: when someone in a remote location electronically penetrates operating systems, firewalls, or other cyber protection systems and then extracts data. All signs point to leaking, not hacking. If hacking were involved, the National Security Agency would know it and know both the sender and the recipient. In short, since leaking requires physically removing data on a thumb drive, for example, the only way such data can be copied and removed with no electronic trace of what has left the server is via physical storage device. I mean, it seems so simple. It seems so basic in the terms of the way you're breaking it down. If they had the evidence of a hack, they would be able to show it. So there is a leak. Who are the leakers? What do you think?
Well, I think I originally suggested some of them could have been from NSA, but it certainly could be from inside the United States government, like, for example, the FBI or even members of CIA or the DEA or the IRS, all of whom, or DHS, for example, all of whom have direct access into the NSA databases, which is where all the storage of all the collected data is, meaning all the emails of Hillary and everybody else in the country. So they could have gone in that way, any of them, and taken them and done that. Or, it could have been somebody in the DNC or, anyone who has access through the system in the government or anybody else who was an insider in any of those organizations could have done it. So it's a matter of finding out who, and you need to go back and look to see. And that, by the way, a lot of that kind of data should be registered in the network logs of the servers involved. and also in the network logs of the network if they were passing the data around. All of those kinds of events would be registered in that network log and traceable.
Bill Binney, you were an NSA official for a long time. You were an NSA whistleblower. You paid a heavy price for trying to tell the American people the truth about what was going on in the NSA. The difference between you and, say, 99.9% of all the other people who are talking about this subject on mainstream media or any media is that you actually know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about because you have the technical expertise to be able to make these assertions. Help the audience just understand what your role was in the NSA, what your specialty is.
Well, I was a senior executive, but on the technical level, we had a two-track approach inside NSA. One was through management, the other was through the technical track. The reason they created that was very simple, is because people who got very good at technical things and solving technical problems, if they moved into management, NSA as a whole would lose that technical skill and capability. So they created a technical track to keep people in the technical track who were good at it, to be able to rise to senior executive level, which is what I did, and that's why I was there. So those were senior level executive positions, not senior management positions. And we were the ones who were looked at to solve the technical problems inside NSA, and so that's basically what I did for fundamentally the world, and also designing programs and systems that would automate analysis and things like that would help in terms of being able to assist analysis in terms of focusing on problems that were issues to be solved. And that's what I did. In fact, the fundamental underlying software that they're using and system design to look at the world, although they removed certain portions of it that I had done for them, that's fundamentally the work that I left them with when I left in end of October 2001. And I left them with that kind of data, but I had protections built into systems that I built because I was trying to conform to the Constitution and the laws of the country, unlike what they're doing today. So they removed filtering up front. That is, if you had nothing to do with anything in terms of association with or any indication that you were associated with criminal activity of any kind, then your data wasn't even taken in, and that was filtered out right up front, so the NSA never had your data in any storage device whatsoever. And the second thing, if you were taken in as a part of a zone of suspicion around some criminal activity, then your data was, any attribute that could identify you was encrypted until such time as we could show probable cause and get a warrant for you, and then you would be targeted. And then the final one was to audit everything, that is, audit anybody coming into the network and where they went, what they did, how long they stayed, and so on, so that we could monitor with certainty who was doing what on the network and with the data. So FBI, if they came in and tried to take data out that wasn't something that they should be doing, we would be notified of that immediately. And all of that, and for example, if we had that in place, Edward Snowden couldn't have done what he did in terms of downloading all that material, because we would have known immediately that when he started doing it, that was happening. So those are the kinds of things that I did. I was, not only solving different kinds of systems and codes and things like that, but also doing design of operating systems to manage information and help analysis of all kinds.
We're speaking with William Binney. He's the former technical director of the World Geopolitical and Military Analysis at the NSA, a co-founder of SIGINT, Automation Research Center, and now the author of a statement by VIPS. You wrote at the end of your document that was published yesterday, Bill Binney, as for the comments to the media as to what the CIA believes, the reality is that the CIA is almost totally dependent on NSA for ground truth in the communications arena. Thus, it remains something of a mystery why the media is being fed strange stories about hacking that have no basis in fact. The problem is that once these strange stories are fed to the media and they get repeated over and over and over again, I think 99% of the people start to believe them, and the voices like your voice and the voice of VIPS, well, with the exception of alternative media like here at Radio Sputnik, people are not hearing it, but if they were able to hear it, it would shatter the illusion that's being created, which I guess is for political purposes.
Yes, this technique of repetition of the assertion from various supposedly authoritative positions, it goes back to ancient Greece in the school of sophism. It was one of the standard ways they used to try to win arguments, regardless of whether or not you had a reliable or valid syllogism or argument. So it was one way to win over opinion and people without actually having any substance behind what you were saying. And that goes back to ancient Greece.
Right, a tried and true method. We're talking with Bill Binney. We're talking about the assertions made by the CIA that, in fact, the Russian government hacked the emails of the Democratic Party and different centers of Democratic Party power and some Republican Party centers of power, now triggering an allegation by the Obama administration, and it seems like by both parties in Congress, for an inquiry about how Russia's taking over the United States. But Bill Binney and the others in the group Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity said the facts don't add up. This wouldn't need to be circumstantial evidence. If there was a hack, not a leak, the NSA would know about it. But in fact, they can't make that point. You are listening to Loud and Clear. We'll be back.